and welcome to part 1 in a 3-part series. This is family, pets, girlfriends, friends, and just kind of my whole big picture of that at this point in my life, okay? So, started off, mom, dad, made it about 5 years before they divorced. Dad's, little crazy, and mom's crazy a little bit from this shit as well. And then, so, I had a friend that was, like, we lived on a block, and here was the block, and all the way around here was his house. Maybe even 2 blocks down. We might have had across the street or not. I can't remember. Can't remember that kid's name. But I was in that neighborhood for a couple years of my life until I was like 5. So then my parents divorced, and my mom hooked up with this dude, which became my stepdad, and he suggested I go to this school. I made a whole video about this school. I actually drove by it, took some video, and the school was like a hippie commune school. It was very bizarre. Some girl that was really a smart person, super high IQ, just happened to go there, and then ended up in college at like 16 or something, or 12, or one of those just ridiculous like scenarios, right? So then the school like got accredited with like, oh, it's such a great school. Look, they had this girl, and so people were putting their kids in the school, right? Well, I was literally in this school, right? My grandfather, in a fight with my dad, shot him right in front of me. And it was pretty much just me, my dad at one point, my grandma, and my dad, I think, were tug-of-warring with me. It was like this whole custody thing that I was like visiting with my dad and then being returned, right? So, right after that was like the 2nd grade year. So I went to like kindergarten, 1st grade, and then I went to this hippie commune school. And they literally asked me not to come back. Now, you should just watch that video, because that was a really messed up time. So now I'm in, Northeast Portland, then I'm out in Malala, and then after that, I think I went to live with my dad after that, I think, and ended up in like Westport, Washington, and then finally ended up in a school in Milwaukee, Oregon, that I spent the most time at, right? So, and kind of like in a normal, like you go to school where you live, right? Because like that school that I went to for the 2nd grade, I literally had to get on a TriMet bus and ride for a long ass time, and then get on the thing and ride a long ass time, right? Nowhere near the school, and the kids were all coming from everywhere else, right? So as far as like hooking up with friends there and all that, like I felt like I was in trouble there all the time, right? For just, like forgetting my lunch, right? But really there was like no food. And they literally told the parents like they should make their own lunch, right? Like 2nd grade, and like you gotta get up at 4:30 in the morning, and you should just watch the video about that. Now I'm moving up to like Westport, and then back now. Now I lived in a little apartment and went to a school down the way, and walked to school and had like friends. I had some friends that lived here, had some friends, and it was like all the kids that lived in the apartment buildings, and then I went to school with them, and it was like kind of like a normal ish thing for a few years. And I actually got held back because of that 2nd grade hippie commune school. I didn't actually learn anything, right? So I went back to 2nd grade. So then I was at that school, and then they jumped me in 4th grade, halfway through 4th grade, they jumped me up to 5th grade, right? Which was a horrible thing, because I literally just jumped over all this curriculum. So I missed out all this in 2nd grade, and then I jumped over, and oh, my friends are here, the people, it was really weird, and my dad just kind of orchestrated it with the school, and then just all of a sudden I'm in 5th grade, just like that. And a part of it was I was so tall, right? They were kind of like, I was huge for 4th grade, and I was less huge, but still huge for 5th grade. Still the tallest kid in the class. So, and I stayed at that school all the way till 6th grade, and then I went to junior high school. Now, halfway through, I think the 1st year of junior high school, I went back to living with my mother and stepdad. So it was just a visitation thing, and my little brother lived with my mom, and I lived with my dad. And then we would, he would come over sometimes, and then I would go over sometimes. And that lasted, I think, like 5 years. Yeah, about like 5 years or something like that. But my dad was pretty much like, he was like he loved fishing. So that's what he wanted to do. But he was like a conveyor belt guy or whatever, right? Now, I had some friends in this time period. And, a little girlfriend at one point, I'll never forget it, Valinda Poe. I've told this, all these extended, there's a lot of stories, long stories in here that are back in the older autobiography videos that, I'm just touching on, right? So there's Valinda Poe. I really remember that was my first ever girlfriend. And then Heidi Hoffman, that was my second girlfriend. Boy, these are the names I remember, though, from back in grade school and whatever. And, if I thought about it, I probably could have a few. Now, I had this one friend that was in Boy Scouts with me, and he started punching me in the arm one day and just wouldn't stop. So I punched him in the face like 3 times. And then, that was weird now. We weren't friends anymore, and we were friends, but he was the one that kind of started it by punching me. Sure, he was punching me in the arm, and I punched him in the face, but there's really no way to get people to stop punching you better than punch them in the face, which is a bad habit that I've had my entire life. When I moved halfway through junior high school, now, instead of kind of being in the neighborhood, which really the junior high school was a lot farther away, like, for a point there, I literally lived like right across the street from the school. Oh, and pets. So when I was, we always had cats, I think. And then when I was like in maybe even junior high school. No. I was in 6th grade, right? Because I remember my dog kept jumping the fence and coming across the street to the school to play with us, and I couldn't get him to stay in our backyard, right? Max was my dog's a German short hair pointer. And when I went to live with my mom, I had to give him up. I don't even think I had him very long. So, that's kind of the freaking theme of my life. Having to give things up, people up, things. Sometimes by choice, sometimes not. So, when I moved in with my mom, now I was getting shuttled by my stepdad into Milwaukee Junior High. Now, we lived in Selwood, which was Portland Public Schools, which was way worse school district than Clackamas, or North Clackamas County School District, which was the district that I had been in for years. So my mom and stepdad were doing something with my address or at something, and I kept me in those schools, right? But it required me to travel. So now I'm living in Selwood, but I'm going to school in Milwaukee. And I'm big, long, again, and another theme of my life is like this huge traveling on public transit at very young ages, right? To go just do whatever, right? And, to go to school. So, and the buses weren't necessarily like super frequent. I could remember like it being viable. I used to jump trains home from school, from junior high school. I'd jump a train and ride it and get close. Because it was viable to walk. And if I missed a bus, this one bus, then I just had to walk. So having friends and all this is like, I remember I had a little friend there for a while, a buddy. And I think, and again, there's a whole video about this. He was my buddy that we did this whole candy thing, and I went over his house a few times, and we hung out a little bit. And he kind of lived out of the way as well, so he was kind of doing a little. I don't think he was like out of the district like I was, but he still had to like ride a bus, or there wasn't a bus, or whatever. I can't remember the exact situation, right? So I had a friend there. Now, Heidi Hoffman was my girlfriend in junior high school. So I had like one in like 6th grade, which was Belinda Poe, and then like one in junior high, which was Heidi Hoffman. And then, I don't even know if I had a freaking girlfriend in high school. Like, I don't even think I did, to be honest. I started packing on the weight living with Mom, and that was because she bought into the low-fat bullshit. Here, eat wheat instead of fucking meat. So, there were some friends that I had living on the houseboat mooring in Selwood. And this was a big family that came from Roseburg, Oregon, I remember. And the mother was just a wicked witch type person, right? And she somehow literally like just got this guy. There was a guy, a bachelor, living there in his house that he owned, and somehow after letting them all move in, he was gone, and then she came with, had a new boy. I mean, I don't know how she did it or what that was, but she had 3 boys and a daughter, right? And so there was like one guy, it was David, Donnie, and Danny, and then the sister. And the sister was like that whole like new wave Depeche Mode, like smoking clove cigarettes. Like she was like cute. And then all the boys were like Motorhead guys. Like their dad gave them all like crazy muscle cars for their 16th birthday. Now, these were kind of weird friends. Like, they were like, I don't know, they almost felt like more like looters. They just were pretending to be friends to see what they could get. Like, they had such a big, tight family. Like, the dad was a bad dad, again, beating up on the mother and all that stuff, and so they just all left. I guess he was really wealthy from logging. So I don't know all the details, but the point being is I never felt like they were like good friends. I always felt like they were just dudes that were there trying to, we'd play a lot, play every day and all that, and hang out, but I don't know. It's just hard to describe about them. And they, as the years went on, like I long moved out, they were still at the house mortgage, but I'd go back to hang out with this friend that I had that I made there when I was like 13, and he was like 30 something, right? And he was the guy running this dredge, right? His Dirty Doug. And I stayed friends with Dirty Doug all the way until pretty much I had this girlfriend. Now I'm jumping ahead, right? So I got fucking hanging out with Dirty Doug. And again, these are just brazen by a lot of stories that are down in the freaking autobiography playlist, right? And he takes me out one night to go get these chicks he saw that are camping on an island, right? Turns out these chicks are like, one of them I like went to freaking school with, right? So he was, you know, questionably going after underage girls. At the time, I had no, kind of recollection, just like, I was drinking tequila, got really fucked up, got in all kinds of trouble, right? But I ended up spending a lot of time around this freaking dude. After my stepdad left, he, like, hooked up with some chick and just dumped my mom. And it had gotten pretty bad up until then, up until when he left. Like, it was just arguing and all this. And a lot of this is, like, coming around because it's like, I'm trying to find happy thoughts in my head, and I'm thinking back throughout my life, and I'm like, and so this is where this video is kind of coming from, right? And so, we used to play fucking Nintendo golf, the boringest shit ever, until, 5 o'clock in the morning. And he would be drinking. Now, early on, I wasn't drinking. Later on, I was drinking. Like, I'd drink over there from like 19 years old on, right? And so, and one thing my mom told me around this time was, don't ever have kids, right? And so, like, the advice that I remember, the one advice I remember my dad giving me was, don't apologize, right? And then my mom, don't have kids. And then my stepdad was, do whatever you want, just don't get caught. Literally the only advice I can ever remember being given, right? Now, I'm just totally, my grandparents, I kind of glossed over them. I'll go back here really quick. I had, obviously, a couple sets of grandparents. My dad's mother, and this is kind of like where a lot of my dad's issues, which just pass on down, is like my dad's grandmother got knocked up by a guy that just split, and then some other guy, the guy that I have his last name, that's not my blood relation, and the guy that I have I don't think this guy was a very good guy, genetically and just personality-wise, right? Because his two daughters literally died so young, super drug addicts, and that was my dad's sisters, right? But that, my dad's mother, she was really into gardening, and they had a property out in Garibaldi that was really nice, and her new husband, and he was a truck driver, and he was a super nice guy. He was like a big fat belly guy, always joking and laughing, just happy all the time. He used to make these beer can things, and you pull the beer can up, and it'd either have a fluff or a penis would fall out, right? So, then my other grandma and grandpa, or my mom's side, was where I spent a lot of time and lived with them for a while. And that's like one of my greatest disappointments in life, is how I just failed my grandparents so thoroughly. Like my grandma's health was getting really bad, and I fucking just couldn't handle it, And then I just did a bunch of crazy shit that actually probably accelerated her demise and made her last, miserable, because I was gone, right? And I was like her number one favorite grandson, and da-da-da. I mean, she only had 4 grandkids, but I was the first. And the love that came from my grandma was just amazing. That is where I think I've only really ever had true from pets and that grandma. Just real love, right? And just every time she'd see me, just a big smile on her face, and just happy woman, and so I spent a lot of time over there, and I lived with them. And the time that I lived with them was my late teens, and all the way up into, like, I had to go back and live with them again at one point when I was really at a freaking low point in my life. And I was partying a lot, which, I don't really look at that like, oh, it's such a bad thing, because, I mean, shit, it was fun, What wasn't fun was, I don't know what wasn't fun. Trying to have, like a good solid income, because I honestly never wanted to be anything, right? Like, when I did the little card thing back in the day, you poke the metal rod and answer questions, and then whatever the card hanging is what you're trying. Mine was janitor. And see, I believe this to be wholly a fail of the system, right? And my parents, like my mom tells me all these, or used to tell me all these stories about how I was exceptional, all this, but they never acted upon my exceptionalism. They never, like, I mean, I got some cool little classes at OMSI and shit that were fun, but I mean, seriously, with the IQ that I had, and then, like, if we had a society that could identify abilities like empathic abilities and all this, I should have most definitely had, much, much higher quality education. Like, my little brother ended up going to, like, Catholic school, like, so he didn't even have to go to public school, right? So my mom split when I was like 16. I went to live with my parents. She went to Spain with my little brother. My little brother got like preferential treatment, to be honest. Like, seriously, he got to travel like that. Like, he got a trip every year, and they had already been doing this with him before I lived with them, right? So my stepdad literally told my mom, like, when I told my mom that I wanted to live with my dad, which my dad, like, showed me a really good weekend, and then was like, hey, call your mom and tell her you want to live with me all the time. And I did, and then that was it. And my mom put up no resistance because my stepdad didn't like me. So, didn't want to have anything to do with me. So then, my little brother was small enough that really my stepdad was like really more his real dad. And then when he just was like, bam, and he just left, I even went at one point and went and talked to my stepdad. When my little brother got back, I was like, hey, he's just back from Spain, He's like, I don't want nothing to do with y'all. He just basically was like, wow. Like, he literally raised my little brother and then just, and, like, when I moved in with them, like, I was a terror. I've always been a terror. Literally, my mom says, right from in the fucking crib, the born and the baby's in the room, and I'm the only baby, like, doing this. Most are just on their back. Like, I'm literally pushed. This is the story she tells me. Like, so I guess I was like, I don't even know. Anyway, so stepdad didn't like me much. It was kind of obvious. Being empathic, I always had these weird feelings. And now I know what was going on. It was like, I knew this person didn't like me. I knew this person did like me. But I just didn't know what I was feeling, It's because, there's no education behind this kind of shit, right? So, and it was weird. Like, I remember this, one of the most uncomfortable feelings of my life this one time was when I was with my dad and we were traveling up the West Coast in this boat that he used to run, right? And that I remember being in a room and full of sailors, and then being like basically called out as a little kid for being a little kid on a boat, and like got my dad in trouble in front of all these people, like all the skippers and private like, because I spent a summer on this boat. Like, stories down if you want to know the whole story, right? So we're on a trip, we're out going up the thing, and we're camping out in the ocean, and then we get up to Seattle, and there's like locks that you have to go through, and we're delivering the boat to somebody, like the yard that owned it or something. And I don't know who these people were, but we're at these people's house and for dinner. And my dad, just to give you an idea about my dad, like, he grew up in a trailer park, but not even inside the mobile home or the trailer or whatever, in a tent outside. Like, his stepdad was mean. So, like, my dad was just like, he just, whatever he could get, he was a poor, scraping by type of person that would just take whatever he could. He didn't steal. I remember distinctly feeling super uncomfortable at these people's house. Like, basically, like my dad like weaseled them or something, like, hey, can I come over for dinner, or invited himself or whatever. And they were like, would you like ice cream? And I'm like, no, thank you. Would you like this? No, thank you. Would you like, no, thank you. So from a very young age, I remember weird kind of feeling situations, right? A lot of memories of those types of things. So anyway, now when the stepdad split, and then the time's going there, the mother is starving me out of the house. He's like not feeding me. I'm getting fed from Doug. I meet this person, this Scott Stogstill, right? And I actually went to school together, but we kind of bumped back in together. Now, I had some friends in high school. Wellborn Parker. I went to this little karate place where I was fucking, bullied by this guy Sam Watt that later became like this notorious bouncer around fucking Portland strip clubs that we'd run into each other. I mean, this dude and me was like, this guy's just a fucking, such an asshole. So he was in karate, but then there was other cool people like Riley Baxter. And Riley Baxter's probably like, there's one other guy I went to school with, Casey. So a couple guys that work at Annie and Bax, right? So those are guys that I've known since like high school, that if I was in Portland and going, I'd bump into maybe, and still in contact with those people, still after all this time. Yeah, I went on one rafting trip with Casey after I got out of prison, and I bumped into him a few times, but man, this guy's like doing family, and that's really, when my mom told me don't have kids, it's kind of what I set my life out to be, not having kids, right? So now I started accumulating friends with this Scott Stogstill, like Brenda and Rebecca. And, oh man, hanging out with Brenda and Rebecca. And Rebecca had a car. And we'd go party and fucking hang out for years. And then, like, they started getting boyfriends. And then I got a girlfriend. And then Scott. And so we started having this big, I had these big groups of friends, that were just kind of building up. Then I got the girlfriend, Julie, right? Which at the start was great, except for I had another girlfriend at the exact same time, Rachel. So I had, a lot of the times in those years, I had a few girlfriends at the same time. Right? But no pets. No pets. No. I did get a pet there right after, or right before my stepdad left, or right after he left, I got a very nice Siamese cat, and I named it Sarge. And my mom made me get rid of it in a very short amount of time. So that's now 2 animals that I had to get rid of. You know, never got to see grow up, right? Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out part 2.